But first, I want to know if you think sex education books can be too sexy for the very people they're aimed at. While the Daily Mail is outraged by issues such as teen pregnancy, it's also appalled by the teaching materials designed to stem the tide of unwanted babies. And today it's given over precious newsprint to a number of cartoons, videos and books that have been cleared for use in sex education classes in primary schools. The paper is appalled that children as young as 5 could be taught the ins and outs, if you'll pardon the expression, of sex in such a graphic way. 16 local authorities have approved this material for use in schools, though the Daily Mail fails to name a single school that actually teaches 5-year-olds using books like How Did I Begin by Mick Manning, one of the ones that's highlighted by the Mail. Now, if you were watching yesterday, you'd know the Daily Telegraph got all het up over coalition plans to teach primary pupils that no means no, and quoted family pressure groups who feared such a message would frighten very young children, though I imagine it's possibly more frightening to have to deal with a man who doesn't understand no means no when he's raping you. That said, I imagine there will be plenty of you who do feel outraged by some of the stuff in today's Mail, but this is what I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm confident 5-year-olds aren't being shown this kind of stuff. I know it's approved for use in primary schools, but they also teach children aged 10 or 11 in primary schools, and it's up to individual heads or governors to decide what to show the younger children. As I said, I'm confident it won't be this. And if you remember the Daily Mail's panic a couple of years back when Labour announced plans to teach 5-year-olds about gay parenting, the paper reckoned it would amount to the active promotion of homosexuality. In reality, books like this, well, to be honest, they're sweet fairy tales about penguins having 2 dads. So, Dominic.
I don't think they're sexy enough, Matthew. I think they should be more graphic. And I think they should be younger. I think the kids should be taught from 2.
I detect an air of facetiousness in your response.
I think it's ridiculous. I think...
What's ridiculous?
You're talking about a rapist here. You're talking about a rapist. No means no. You are talking about a man raping a woman.
I'm talking about teaching children. I'm saying that if you instill the idea of no means no into someone when they're innocent and young, they might carry that lesson with them later in life.
Well, my question is this, then. Do you think a man who is a rapist, he will have any bearing on his behaviour, what a teacher said to him at primary school? I don't believe that for a second.
Well, I do.
Well, we can disagree.
I'll tell you why, because if what we're taught at school had no bearing on our later life, close all the schools.
Well,
because you're wasting your time.
That's absolutely not true.
Come on, you're saying... you pick a sex education doesn't carry with you through life, but maths and English does. It's nonsense, Dominic.
No, I put it back to you, Matthew. I think what a child... I mean, for example, Patrick, now he's 6.
Yeah.
He's exactly this demographic. Yeah. I'm very happy for Patrick to be taught about the birds and the bees.
Right.
Personally, I'd much rather, as a parent, he was taught to read and write. And do maths, and I'll take care of his... You
don't think there's enough time in the day to do both?
Absolutely not. And as a parent, as a mum and dad, that's my responsibility to give my kid his morals.
But you have to accept that some parents don't do it.
Why? Because they're useless parents.
If I was to show you some of the Christian lobby groups that rail against me every day of the week, I'm pretty confident that some of them will have somehow managed to breed, although heaven knows how.
Those Christian... Well...
And that they will be the very people whose children won't know anything about sex education. Like a friend of this on the show who was telling you about their adult friend who wondered if they could get pregnant from going through the back door, which we talked about a couple of weeks back on the show. If adults think
Matthew,
that, and they do,
I'm always fascinated.
The
idea is that the idea is that we have this massive teenage pregnancy because we don't have better education.
Well, we've had better education.
I don't believe for a
second.
I don't believe for a second a 15-year-old girl, 16-year-old girl, 17-year-old girl doesn't know the impact of what she's doing. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to expect a teacher in a classroom with 30 kids is going to have an impact on a child of 15, and let alone a rapist at 30 or 40 or 25.
Janet, come on.
The whole point is that these words are sexy to us because mostly, it's not a secret, we've had sex. So when you read the word erection or orgasm, whatever it happens to be, you know what it means. Yeah. When you're a little child, you don't know what it means, but you know you feel things that are different from just eating, sleeping, watching television, playing with your friends. And you need to be taught to make sense of those things. And primary school is a perfect place. You cannot get into a primary school playground for buggies and small children. There is a lot of procreation going on. It's the perfect time to answer the questions they ask. Only those questions.
Do you think, just to steer us back to the thing, do you think schools are using the more explicit books highlighted by the Daily Mail to teach 5-year-olds?
I don't think anybody is sitting a class of 5-year-olds down and saying, today it's sex, no. But I think they're making the books available. I would imagine they're making them available
head teachers.
to Key Stage 2 children, probably, which is 7 and rising. And they should be available because children are sexual beings very early on. And that's the thing we don't like talking about.
Levi, you're going to have to hold your tongue because we have to take a break. I have to take a break. By law, Screechy Woman runs my life. It's like being married to the first wife. No. What about you, Levi?
Well, I think this... I agree with Dominic in a way. I think this is a perfect example of the nanny state taking over and telling us what to do.
But you are aware that the nanny state, which was particularly prevalent under Labour, has led to a 6% fall in teen pregnancy.
Absolutely, but I think certain things should be left for parents. Or I think that this £50 million that they're spending on this whole thing, I think part of that should be educating parents how to educate their kids. I really do think that there's a job for parents still to be had here.
But what do you do with the parents who won't educate their children? And there are lots of them. You're going to hear, I would imagine, some on the phone in a moment, because normally they get through their net. Joke. It's an open system. You're going to hear something. There are parents out there, for religious reasons or personal embarrassment reasons, can't talk to their kids about sex.
Well, you talk about personal embarrassment. I would be embarrassed. I'd perhaps be crying if I heard some of the stuff that if I was a 7-year-old and you're telling me about erections and stuff like that.
Well, what are we supposed to say? I mean, you have erections in the womb.
But I think if my mum is talking to me at 7 about, you know, what it is to say no and about sex education.
If your mum had taught you about erections by the time you're 7, then you're not going to laugh about them in school particularly.
Absolutely.
I imagine the embarrassment comes from ignorance.
I would listen more if my mum was telling me. I think it would be more in tune.
But you might have a great mum. I'm very aware...
Hello, Mum.
OK. But I'm very aware that there are lots of parents that fail their children in regards to sex education. All the stats tell us about it, and schools have to step in. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of many of the things the last Labour government, I call them the last Labour shower, did, but they achieved one success clearly, and that was they've reduced the number of teen pregnancies in this country, and they did that through increased emphasis on sex education in schools. And I think that result stands for itself. The Daily Mail, though, is concerned about the strength of these books. Well, let's take some calls and see where we go from there. So I said the Daily Mail is concerned about the strength, if you like, or the steaminess of some of these new books. Let's hear what you have to say, Kirsty.
OK, we'll take Gemma first on line 10.
Morning, Gemma.
Sorry.
Morning. Sorry. Gemma, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Go on then. What do you think?
Basically, I've got a 5-year-old son. He's my eldest. And basically, I've told him everything you've just spoken about, i.e. erection. I don't believe you should change the words for them. He knows he's got a penis. Because I'm a girl, I've got a vagina. And I just think I would much rather teach him that at home whilst, you know, it's happening. It's like he saw his dad in the shower, for example, and it's like, well, that's an erection. It's nothing wrong. Rather than find it in the playground.
That leads to a whole other discussion, I think. But, Gemma, you're doing a cracking job, no doubt about it. Do you have a problem with schools putting out the same message?
No, I think there's so much talk when children are younger. They've heard this, they've heard that. I was absolutely terrified as a child of sex.
What did your parents tell you about sex when you were young?
They didn't really broach it.
Right.
And I had sex quite young, and I just felt I was ill-prepared. You know, it wasn't what I was expecting. And when my mother did speak to me about it, it was a bit mules and boons. You know, we were going to be in love, we were going to be together forever. Not very realistic.
OK. Gemma, thank you. Nice call. The husband shower line is going to stick with me for the rest of my TV career, Gemma, but thank you all the same.
OK, we have Angela next on line 1.
Angela, good morning.
Good morning.
Are you happy for teachers... Well, first of all, are you happy for local authorities to sanction this new crop of sex education books as suitable for primary schools?
I think that the parents should be given the option, and they should also be given a leaflet is telling them what they're actually telling the children. Because I've got two wee girls, 8 and 9, and my wee girl came out of school 2 days ago and said it's disgusting. She was absolutely mortified, and I don't know exactly what she was taught or what my wee girl, who's in the primary below her, is going to be taught next, because they're doing it throughout the whole school from primary 4.
Why don't you know what she was taught if you're her mother?
Well, they didn't tell you. They just said that they were going to do a sex education lessons with the children from primary 4 to primary 7, and that was it. And it started on Monday.
Yeah.
And we received no information what they were going to get taught or anything. It just was basically told that we're doing a lesson, and if you didn't want your children to participate, let the school know.
Okay.
But they didn't tell us what they were going to do with them.
Well, I mean, if they're going to teach about sex, Angela, I think as an adult that's had children, you must have a pretty clear idea what that might involve.
Well, we didn't get sex education in my
No.
school.
Well, that's part of the point. But when you say you didn't know what they were going to be taught, now, if we were doing advanced mathematics, I'd be with you. I'd have no idea what the children were being taught. But sex, you must know what they're going to be taught. How they're going to be taught it, you may not know, but you must know what they're going to be taught.
Oh, of course. I've got 2 children, but, I mean, I didn't get taught sex education and I was 30 before I had my
I'm sorry, Angela, I don't understand what you're worried about.
What I'm worried is that what are they actually telling them?
Well, they're telling them about sex. It's sex education.
From primary 4 to about primary 6, I believe that they should only be teaching them, like, names of body parts and...
Well, I don't know, but I would suggest it's a conversation to have with your children if they're having the lessons, and for them to come out and say it's disgusting. I would be extremely concerned if I was a parent about how my child is perceiving the lessons they're receiving and about what I might have taught my child. They have such a strong reaction.
Well, I have told my children about their bodies and stuff like that, so they do know, but from what I gather, she wasn't very happy with what she got told.
Do you know what it was that she specifically found disgusting? I don't want to go into too much detail, but was it the fact that the lessons themselves are ring-fenced? They're made special. Some kids don't go. The letter goes out beforehand. We already know it's a special subject, and children often react to that in the way they think you want them to because they've done this special thing. So they don't waltz out as though they've just done double French. They know they're bringing the secret of the world back to you. So it may be either her reaction is very deep about something very specific, or it's a kind of general, that's disgusting, and they've forgotten about the actual lesson the next day, but they've kept the message.
Well, I mean, she did get the message because she kind of was embarrassed about it. And I said, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Tell me what you learned. But she's like, I don't want to talk about it.
The children are a little bit embarrassed, aren't they?
It's a mixed class.
Especially boys. I think we have to differentiate what's the feelings for boys different from girls. I mean, in my school days, if my pecker had got caught in my zip, for instance, I would have much rather my mum, you know, or somebody in my family to sort of to sort it out rather than ask a teacher as a boy.
I can't believe you had zips. Luxury.
But I think that boys, you know, I think it's crucial to sort of differentiate how boys would feel about this sort of stuff as to girls, because I think girls would sort of tend to accept these kind of things a bit different than boys.
I'm quite intrigued as to whether parents should be informed as to the actual nitty-gritty detail about how sex education classes...
You can
ask, yeah?
It's not secret information.
Angela, thank you. We've got time for one more.
OK, we'll take Sarah on line 3.
Sarah, good morning.
Good morning.
What would you like to say?
Basically, I think my point is you start with maths with like 2 add 2. You don't say it's too difficult to do differentiation. We're going to wait till we're 14. You need to start with the basics when they're tiny and work all the way up.
I totally agree, and as I say, I don't believe that what the Daily Mail has seen is a whole lot of books that are approved for use in primary schools. Primary schools deal with children aged 5 to 11, but there's not actually any suggestion, and they can't name a single school that is using a book that may be tailored for an 11-year-old to teach a 5-year-old. And I'm sure if they'd found a school that was doing, you know, hard banging at it, oral sex, backdoor love, whatever, I'm sure the Daily Mail would have been the first paper to name and shame that school. But they don't name one. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. You start with the basics, you build up, and these books, of which there are many, many, and I've read loads. I've read about 20 we've had in the office. They're fantastic, you know. They're so... the ones for the little kids... You can see the ones for the little kids because it's all sweetness and light, and mummies and daddies are friends, and daddies are friends, and that's the way it is. And then when you get up to 11, it's a little bit more engaging.
Sophisticated, yeah, of course you tailor it to the...
Eric's got his hands on this one, haven't you, Eric? I can tell.
Not that one.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, it's like swimming against the tide. Now, after the break...